lower growth, higher taxes, more teenage pregnancies, more drink and drug abuse, lower life expectancy, higher rates of suicide. The three worst countries in the world: United States, Portugal, United Kingdom. So this is a real issue, and this was what we were talking to the people, and many people advised us, don't take this message to the people, you've got to dumb it down and make it simpler. We took this to the people, and it actually worked. I think also we had a situation in the period up to 1999 and beyond, when we had the Labour Party running Scotland, where there was chaos. There was no sense of common direction. And we dictated that we had to have a new North Star, and that new North Star had to be the goal of increased sustainable growth. We want everyone aligned with that. School teachers, pupils, businesses, the voluntary sector, clearly our political people, etc. So that issue there was to say we have a common sense of purpose. And in our administration, when we came in 2007, we moved from having 149 government objectives to having one government objective called increased sustainable growth. And that gives us a configuration like this where we expect alignment. We expect everyone to be aligned with that goal, and that creates a cohesion, builds a level of trust, and I'll talk more about that in a moment, and looks to give us this kind of future reality where instead of negative outcomes, we're able to create a gravitational pull towards Scotland, and having created that gravitational pull towards Scotland, start to create a model that has much more positive outcomes, a virtuous circle, not a vicious circle. And essentially our destiny, we believe, is to cut that cord and allow Scotland to catapult up to the front. And I know this can happen because in 2005 we made use of the government's legislation on freedom of information and asked what was happening and what was being said about Scotland's oil in 1974. And we got a report that said we've got to take the wind out of the sails of the SNP. We've got to pull them back. And the way we do that is we'll do more foreign investment. Foreign investment which didn't work, foreign investment that came to Scotland and then went to Hungary and went to Taiwan and went to Beijing. But what the report also said was Scotland, with its oil, will have a currency as strong as the Norwegian krona. Scotland, with oil, will have chronic surpluses to an embarrassing degree. We're facing deficits just now. Chronic surpluses to an embarrassing degree. And Scotland will have the grounds for repealing the Act of Union. So that's what convinces me that we can be up at the front. We can be one of these other small countries, higher growth, higher levels of performance. Now, let me tell you a little bit about us as people. I think the SNP have got some hidden advantages. And the hidden advantages are advantages that can accrue here in Catalonia to you and your politicians. And that is that we were a 79-year-old party that was in opposition for 74 years. Not in Westminster claiming expenses. We were doing real work, real jobs, and treating politics as a part-time effort. It made us efficient, it made us competent, and we've been able to show that competence. We've been able to persuade people that we're aligned with them, that we have lived these real lives, that we are hard-working and resilient, like the people of Catalonia, and that we have that essentially resilience that came from doing it the hard way. I think it's also given us a true and higher sense of purpose. And I think this idea of purpose is so important because it is what drives us. As a friend of mine says, you cannot have a culture change, but what you can have is an altruistic, worthy purpose that will drive a new culture. And I think we've also got a big awareness of Scotland's potential and a potent vision that some of the same will not do, more of the same will not do. There's this wonderful guy called Eric Beinhocker, and I like Eric Beinhocker very much. Eric Beinhocker has got two propositions. One he says, stasis, doing the same thing. Stasis in the fitness landscape, he says, is a recipe for extinction. You have to evolve and develop and move on. But he also says, vested interest like stasis because it's a game they win, a game that they are comfortable with. And the other thing he says is, beware of the big man economy. He says a big man economy is where the chief, the dictator, the party, the establishment run the economy mainly in the interest of the chief, the dictator, the party and the establishment. And he says you'll know that's been happening because two conditions will happen. You'll have lower growth than your neighbours, Scotland, and you'll have a migration of talent from your economy to other more liberal economies, Scotland. So we were a big man economy, but things are moving on. In 1999, in a parliament where there are 129 seats, 128 of us vote, we have one presiding officer, the SNP came in with 35 seats. Good start. We were in opposition against a coalition of Labour and Liberal Democrat politicians. In 2003, we went backwards, 27. Did we go backwards in terms of public appreciation? I don't think so. I think what happened was people became aware of the new electoral system where they could have two votes, one for the candidate, one for the party, and they spread their bets. They voted in 7 Greens, they voted in 8 Socialists. And then we had a change which was moving on to 2007, 47 seats, a photo finish first place, 47 for us, 46 for Labour. I like to think that I was Spartacus, the 47th, that 47 meant that we were in minority government. And we ran that minority government, displayed competence, and because of that, we're in this time with 69 seats, a majority in a parliament that was designed by the UK government to prevent a majority ever happening for anyone, especially us. And that is significant. So I've stepped down from politics, but I tell you there's a wonderful quote from Enoch Powell, the English politician, who says, all political careers end in failure, except mine. we're in good shape. So I think the question is, how did this happen? I think it was an increased exposure of the people of Scotland to our arguments. I think it was the competence in government and the clear sense of purpose that we had. I think it was the absolute hardwired negativity, blame game, pathetic, moronic negativity of the opposition. That did them no good. Hallelujah. I think what also was terrific was we had a national conversation. And the national conversation was not me broadcasting like this, but listening. And what we were listening was we had a laptop computer, a big screen like this. We were asking questions, and then we were using a mind map to build the answers. Answers of a good idea that might get criticism over here, that might get augmentation here, that might get further development here. Wonderful. We ran I ran 191 of these. We had 9,200 people in the room for industrial sectors, for communities, and we came close to, I think, the ambitions of a guy called Mark Moore. Mark Moore, Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. Mark Moore talks about the need for government to deliver public value, good outcomes. But the other side of his coin is active citizens, get more active. We think this helped create the mood and create active citizens because people realised they were being listened to, treated seriously, and also they were developing common cause. People were applauding at the end of these meetings because they had been heard, and because they'd been heard in the context that they were hearing other people and hearing that they wanted the same thing, a better Scotland. So I think that was great, and we were also weaving in our philosophies. Scotland was the home of the Scottish Enlightenment in 1776. We blew it. We made nothing of it. We allowed the Americans to create a great country in the back of our ideas. This time round we're serious, we're having a second Enlightenment and we're going to make more of it. And that's what the national philosophy is about. Scottish Enlightenment, great thinkers, gave it all away to America and they made great use of it. Now, the possibility of having a new Enlightenment, Scotland, Catalonia and others coming together to weave in those thinkers from all over the world, blended like Scotch whisky, that allows us to move forward. And as a result of this kind of thinking, this kind of debate about how we can bring in systems thinking, scenario planning, mediation into the mix and get a new politics of active citizens driving things forward. One of my civil servants said something really nice to me. He said this, do you think Scotland could become a teaching hospital? And what he really meant was, look, we've been mediocre in the past. We've been awful at economic development. We've been bad at planning. We've been very poor at public procurement, we've been very poor at the way we manage our health service. Supposedly we started now to get professional, to really get organised, to get focused, to use modern techniques, and to get everyone in the room to build a common cause. Do you think we could be a teaching hospital? Well, I tell you, I'd rather take the challenge of reforming public services in Scotland, 5.2 million, or Catalonia, 7 million, than do it in India with 1.2 billion, or China, etc. So it's important to hear. But here is one of the most important messages I'm going to give you tonight. By being in politics and having this debate, we met some fabulous people. And one of the most fabulous of these people was a guy called Professor Ken Koch from Santa Monica in California. Now, he's not always been fabulous. He was a lawyer once upon a time, but that happens, you know. And then he was a judge, but now he's a mediator. And Ken Koch has got something really important to say. He's just saying to us, if you want to optimize anything, it would be kind of cool if you tried collaboration. That works. If you want sub-optimization, you can try blame, backstabbing, negativity, foot dragging, aggression. All of that will get you sub-optimization. Here he says, this is my ladder of unity. Rung number one, we can be united in opposition. We can lock arms, make no progress, learn nothing, use a lot of energy. Pointless. He says, however, there is a worse sin. You can be over in that corner of the room, nowhere near the ladder, ignoring the ladder. Let's move on, he says. And he says, the next rung up the ladder is a worthy unifying goal. And I was initially amazed at how low down the ladder that was. But it is fundamental. That is the double six. That's what starts the game going. That's what builds cohesion. Next rung, an open, fair process. Great. Rung beyond that, building a relationship. We're working on the worthy goal. We've got the fair process. We're beginning to like and trust each other, see evidence that we're both working in the same direction. Beyond that, rung number 5, where we've got experience and resilience, where in tough recessionary times, when there are cuts, when there's a depression, when there's low growth, we know it's best to hang in together. The top rung of his ladder, when we genuinely care about each other. Now, I know that sounds utopian. I used to work for IBM, and IBM was a land of shoot the wounded and you know, all of that good stuff. It was not. But this, I think, is the answer, because if we're all lifting each other's boats and they're lifting our boats, we all rise. It's the rung of zero waste, and that's where we're having our debate now about how we come together in common cause. And essentially, the reason we want to do that is if Scotland's performing in steady state like that, and we set a goal that's way up there, then we're not going to get there by trying harder. We're going to have to do different things. We're going to have to collaborate, innovate, improve, remove inhibitors, break down the silos, get common cause, make investment, justify investment, push forward. And that is all based, I mentioned Deming at the start. I mean, Deming, to my mind, is a god. He drew this diagram in Japan in 1950. And he's essentially saying, in any system where we design and redesign what we're going to deliver, we've got to talk to our customers, we've got to talk to our clients. And then as the system operates round, we've got to go back and talk to our clients to move it forward. We need feedback loops. We need to look at the data. We need to join the dots to see what's happening in order to make a performance assessment. And my view is the way we do that is that if we can come together as one big system, one big community, the community of Scotland, the community of Catalonia, if we can develop a worthy altruistic goal about getting more people in work, let's say, if we can maintain contact with our constituency, the people of Catalonia, civil servants, politicians, the whole bit, and we draw in those that could and should help us, and we keep that conversation going, then we have something that is a moving target that moves things on. And what I like, I'm proposing to civil servants that we need a more scientific approach. I mean, politicians can have a very bad day when that piece of data is announced, let's say about employment. That could be a very bad day, and this could be a day for false euphoria. But it's a stable system. These data points are a stable system. What we're talking about is, can we have policy where we are looking to make policy changes, increase levels of collaboration, align our education system more with what we're trying to do in our economy, align our planning system more with what we're trying to do in our economy, align our public procurement more with what we're doing in our economy, such that we end up with a much higher performing, more stable system. And we have this in the public debate where a future administration would find it difficult to remove that particular intervention because it is clearly worked and moved on. So I'm not going to pause on this just now, just keep going. I think also we're learning from lots of other things. I've been very influenced by a guy called Mike Rother, who's worked out how Toyota did what Toyota did. And he's essentially creating a huge pyramid of mentoring. Senior people mentoring junior people all the way down the organisation, so I could be a mentor and be mentored by a senior person. And what he's advocating, and what I think would be interesting for all of Scotland, is to sit down with every person, every child, every business, every department of government, and get them to spell out exactly where they are in capability terms just now. What are we capable of just now? To get them to look maybe 2020, not 2030, at where they would ideally like to be in 2020, and then get them to look at what would be a stretch target, say in 6 months' time, and begin to identify the obstacles between here and there, and the baby steps that we need to take to move on, and make this a perpetual challenge. So we're challenging individuals, families, communities, businesses, sectors, regions, etc. Now, meanwhile, when we've got this positive agenda, we have opponents in Scotland who will spread fear, uncertainty and doubt, who will try to delay, who will demand detail and more certainty in a complex world, who will ignore their mismanagement of the past. They're essentially saying to us, we know we're in a mess just now, we know we were in control when this mess took place, but we think you should keep us in power. Who will ignore the record of all we've got, and it will take time to remind Scotland of the banks that failed and what happened to Ireland and Iceland. And I'd just like to pause on that for a moment, because our proposition is essentially that we are building a refreshed case based on competent government, on Alberto Alessina's trend about the inevitability of more small countries, about the fact that we have got the key attributes that we need to move forward, and the fact that we're talking to people to make sure that Scotland manages its own direction into the future. But I wanted just to finish by giving you some responses to the killer points that our opponents would make. They would tell us that we couldn't afford to bail the banks out. Our response to that is, who was regulating the banks? And the other response is, who were the banks too big to fail for? Not just Scotland. There was a bigger community that would have suffered a Lehman Brothers type issue if things had happened to Scotland. And we're also the question of why is the UK being able to stagger through this period, and that's because of sterling, quantitative easing, printing money, and essentially letting inflation go. So there's a secret inflation tax operating in the UK just now. And I think if Scotland had been independent, who were we more likely to follow? We're more likely to follow the Norwegians, who have been impeccable in the management of their economy and the management of their oil wealth. And the other killer question is about Ireland and Iceland. And I think that experience is all good for Scotland and Catalonia, because I think we can understand exactly what happened. We can understand all of that. The good moves they made in good times, the bad moves they made in good times, the good moves they made in bad times, and the bad moves they made in bad times. In essence, some of these in the books of Iceland and Ireland are assets, the good moves they made, and liabilities, the bad moves they made. But when you transfer those bad moves into our knowledge, they become assets for Catalonia and Scotland. They help us guide our way and avoid making the same mistakes we made. And I think we're in a position now where we can learn and we can enter these as assets in the Catalonian National Asset Register and the Scottish National Register. So that's me, had my say, folks. I'm going to put an earphone on, and if there's any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Great majority of the business people in Scotland that an independent state is the solution for the improvement of the economy. What are the key points?
The key points is we did what I used to do in IBM. We went and made house calls. We went to their offices. We asked to see not just one person but the whole board. We gave a presentation a bit like this. We stayed and answered questions. And after you do 20 of these, 40 of these, 60 of these, 100 of these, you become like Johnny Appleseed. Everyone's seen you, everyone's heard it, the word is out. And we have to remember how connected people are in a small country. The word ripples out. And people talk to each other with Facebook posts. So we used logic and essentially made a very simple proposition to the business people, which is essentially saying this: look, how can you call yourself a chief executive if all you do is spend a revenue budget? You have to be trying to optimize the country. And they bought that big time. And the understanding was, if we had a more effective government, if there was more focus on economic growth, and this platform was operating at a high level, then their businesses would do correspondingly even better. So they have bought it. There are pockets of opposition. The CBI, the Confederation of British Industry in Scotland, opposes what we're trying to do, but not from its membership, from the Supreme Soviet of the CBI. And we have renamed the CBI as the Confederation of London-based Businesses in Scotland. And therefore we know who they are. And their opposition is actually...
Tens idea d'on és?
Sobre aquest rap.
Doncs bé, hi ha un micro? Sí. Aquí.